Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and welcome to the second installment that we've prepared for you for our entry on the website jbefraud.com. And today's entry is going to entail the appointment of Jay Dardenne as Commissioner of Administration and the $615,000 impact that has upon the state employees' retirement system's unfunded accrued liability. And I might add that unfunded accrued liability stands at about $18 billion. And when you divide that by the number of approximate population of Louisiana, which is 4.5 million, you come up with a number of $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state of Louisiana. Now, what does that mean? That means if we were to pay that off today, that means everyone, myself, you, if you have a 6-month-old infant, each one of us owes $4,000. And that's why this type of an appointment with such reckless fiscal irresponsibility bears notice. Now, let me just say this. I want to express appreciation for all the thanks with regards of the formation of this website and the tracking of the votes which we have committed to. And I'll answer the first question right off the bat. Absolutely, we are going to provide a link for the itemized breakdown of the voting in terms of the House Speaker. As everyone knows, as soon as Governor Edwards, or Governor-elect Edwards, he's still a few days away from being inaugurated, one of the first issues at hand is to vote for that Speaker of the House. We obviously, everybody and his brother wants a breakdown of that vote. I think every news media outlet is going to be seeking it, and we certainly will have a link up there, and we are going to highlight Republicans who defect over and go with Walt Leger. As I said at the outset of this, there is an intent to hold our elected officials accountable, and in so doing, we will see just how many are willing to do a similar action to Mr. Dardenne and cross over, if you will, and join in the other side. And let me just say this very briefly. I mentioned in the introductory video for this website our intent to really work hand in hand with C.B. Ferguson in terms of his diligent tracking of the votes of the legislature. I don't know what I would have done over the last several years without his diligent tracking and providing direct links for various votes. Obviously, regrettably, we're not going to have Mr. Ferguson for performing that. It just means we're all going to have to circle the wagons and do some of the work ourselves. I mean, sometimes you get accustomed to being spoon-fed, and Mr. Ferguson had a tendency to help us all out so much in that regard, and his services and his friendship to me, though we just communicated online, I'm going to miss tremendously, but we are where we are, and even though we won't have the services of Mr. Ferguson in terms of providing those critical votes, like I said, it just means we're going to have to do a little more work ourselves. But that does not lessen the resolve of this website, particularly on key tax measures, because let's face it, they're going to be coming up in the upcoming session, special session and otherwise. And we certainly will track the votes, and we will highlight those so-called fiscal conservatives who would go along with this versus reducing the waste that is so inherent in state spending. Now, let me move on to what this core topic is, and that is the appointment of Jay Dardenne. I'm going to give you a link for the detailed computation, but Jay Dardenne's impact on the unfunded accrued liability for state employees, I have calculated, I am an inactive CPA, so I do like crunching numbers, I have calculated that number to be $615,000. Now, what does that mean? That means that Jay Dardenne got, in today's dollars, if you just walked up and paid him off, the difference between the pension he's going to draw, which, by the way, no one ever said Bobby Jindal was skimpy on pay packages, and he took tremendous criticism of that, including from Governor John Bel Edwards. I'm going to go ahead and call him Governor, even though as I'm filming this, he's a few days away. And yet, Bobby Jindal's Commissioner of Administration, Christy Nichols, was making $201,000 a year, and Mr. Edwards saw fit to go ahead and give an 18% increase and pay Mr. Dardenne $237,000 a year. And he previously was making $115,000 as Lieutenant Governor. So those are the numbers I used. I used a 7% discount rate to discount it back to present value. That's the rate that is assumed return for the state retiree system assets. And the number that I came up with was $615,000. That's the amount of money that it would pay. That's the increase. Now, that's not, I mean, you can see the computations of the present value of his retirement packages. I'm just talking about the increase from this appointment. $615,000. All right. If you divide that over the 4 years of service that he'll be providing, that's over $150,000 a year. In fact, about $154,000 a year. When you add that into his package of $237,000, you come up with a figure for the 4-year service we're going to be receiving from Mr. Dardenne of $391,000 a year. Okay? And Bobby Jindal certainly had a propensity to do this. We all know it. He put in folks like Troy Hebert into these higher salary positions to jack up the high three, and he took immense criticism over it. And my point is that Mr. Holier-than-thou, John Bell Edwards, apparently took notes of what Bobby Jindal could do, and he said, hey, I can one-up you on that. Now, let's just say this. When Jay Dardenne stood in front of those cameras and made his endorsement of John Bell Edwards, forget what he said. Forget what came out of his mouth, as so is frequently as the occasion you need to do with politicians. Forget what's coming out of their mouths. Here's what Jay Dardenne was really saying to you. I was clearly the best candidate to be governor of this state, but since you people were too stupid to realize that and know that I was the best candidate, I have another gentleman over here. His name's John Bell Edwards, and he values my services, and I'm going to take this opportunity to stick it to you, the taxpayers, okay? And make no mistake, that's what's been done. Not only the $237,000, which as I said was 18%, we're supposedly in such a big budget crisis, you know, such difficult times, and yet we can see fit to give an 18% pay raise over Bobby Jindal's previous Commissioner of Administration. But that's not the big hit. The big hit is this $615,000 impact on the unfunded accrued liability. Let me tell you something. Some years back, or I guess maybe only a year and a half ago, everyone criticized Mike Edmondson about bellying up to the trough. In fact, John Kennedy appropriately said somebody came up here with all 4 feet and their snout in an attempt to rip the taxpayers off. Look, Mike Edmondson looks like tiddlywinks compared to what's going on here with Jay Dardenne. $615,000. Now, by comparison, will make $237,000 a year. As I said, a $615,000, that's the present value. That's what if you paid it off today. All right, $615,000 increase in the unfunded accrued liability, bringing what his effective compensation is, as far as I'm concerned, for a 4-year appointment, to $391,000 a year. To put that in perspective, a United States Senator is paid $174,000 a year. Now, you tell me what sense that makes, okay? But Jay Dardenne saw an opportunity. He said, you know, I'll show the taxpayers of Louisiana, you know, you're going to turn me down for being governor of this state? Fine, I'll stick it to you financially, okay? It's easy to see why Jay Dardenne may have gotten so upset at the ads that Vitter ran about his extravagant birthday bash, because it is clear that Jay Dardenne has no qualms about ripping off the taxpayers. That's what he and John Bell Edwards in tandem have done with this appointment. Now, when I first put this website out, I made the analogy of John Bell Edwards to a hurricane. And, you know, I made the statement that nothing good can come from a hurricane. Prior to some of the things that have transpired in the last month when I gave you installment 1, which was the appointment of Mike Edmondson, which, as I said, is basically child's play. It's tiddlywinks compared to this Jay Dardenne situation. You know, I was prepared to hope that John Bell Edwards would stay at a Category 3 hurricane. Now, he's out there in the Gulf. landfall is coming. I think that it is noon on January the 11th, which is about 3 days from the day I'm filming this. There is no alternative to upgrade him but to upgrade him to Category 4 hurricane. Now, why do I say that? Well, first we had the Edmondson's reappointment, which even his most ardent supporters hammered him for that. But John Bel Edwards is a puppet. Make no mistake about it. I don't believe the man's got the slightest amount of backbone in him. You know, the Sheriff's Association said, hey, you're going to appoint Mike Edmondson, and he did it, okay? Next, we have him literally ripping the taxpayers of this state off with the J. Dardenne appointment. Next, we have him saying, I don't like this idea of if you're from 18 to 49, an able-bodied person. Don't have any dependents now, okay? I can understand it if you were providing for dependents. We're talking about single people 18 to 49. You shouldn't have to work or get any kind of job training for your food stamps. We're just going to give them to you, okay? All right, you know, and then next we have what is the upcoming you know, proposal of taxes slated, and there's rumblings going around. You know, it was stated, Sean Wilson gave a presentation at the press club that the gasoline tax is presently at 16 cents, and he made the statement that adjusted for inflation is really more like 7 cents in the time that it was initiated to dollars, and all that may be well and good. I am afraid, and I'm letting you know this in advance, that a gasoline tax is viewed as easy pickings now because of the plummeting price of oil and the break we've gotten at the pump. All of a sudden, that's viewed as a tax that, whoo, nobody should mind because we've had $1.30 drop in a gallon in the tax on gas. So 20 cents is the number that I'm being told may be bannered about. But here's the really difficult pill to swallow, is that only 8 cents of that may be dedicated to roads and improvements. The other 12 cents would be used for this kind of slush, you know, the overpayment of these executives. And so for all of those reasons, you know, I felt like, you know, and we're going to give you a link of the devastation of the various categories of a hurricane, and you're going to see how devastating a Category 4 hurricane is. I think it has to pack a people about 150 mile an hour winds. Look, let's hope he doesn't get to Category 5, okay? He's certainly Category 4. We're going to give you the link for just how much damage that type of a hurricane can do. And I want to issue one challenge, all right? J. Dardenne, you know, he's getting $391,000 a year effectively to deliver the message. It's not pretty, it's not sugar-coated, it's just bare facts. Well, you know, boy, that must be really nice to be getting paid $391,000 a year to go out and say, here's the deal, all right? I'm getting a nice package, but folks, you fixing to do some suffering, okay, one way or another. Either paying more taxes. I mean, you got to pay me. I'm $391,000 a year. You didn't elect me governor, so I'm going to put it to you, all right? Well, it really must be nice to sit back and have a little press conference and utter such. But I'm going to make a challenge. J. Dardenne, well, here's another ironic thing. J. Dardenne said, we don't yet have a plan, but we certainly will have one from coming out of the session. Well, isn't that incredible? You have 2 of the 4 major gubernatorial candidates, and yet we're making the statement now, we don't have a plan. Well, gee, I guess that was because you spent all of your time in the campaign trail focusing on nothing but 16-year-old episodes. That's no plan. We'll all admit to that. So apparently now you're making the admission that you had no plan for dealing with this. You're going to try to wing it in there, okay? And that ought to be an interesting show as to how well you're able to wing this. But I do want to make this challenge. J. Dardenne and John Bel Edwards have both said, and I quote, all options are on the table. Well, I'd like to propose this as an option because, you know, an awful lot of state employees fell for the John Bel Edwards, you know, he's arrived, he has arrived, finally we'll get pay raises, finally we'll have a boost in our retirement pension. No, you won't. Only the fat cats, and J. Dardenne wasn't even from the party supporting John Bel Edwards, but only the fat cats are going to get these kind of packages. It'll still be the same old Bobby Jones. John Q state worker isn't going to get anything, okay? I don't know, it may take you a while for that realization to come in. You're not going to get anything. So here's what I'd like to propose. Let's just say that $60,000 is a fair pension to be exempt from state income taxes. And by the way, if people out there aren't aware of that, Another nice perk of Mr. Dardenne's, what I think is going to be about $20,000 a month, he's going to draw for the rest of his life after his 4-year stint is up. And here's the beautiful part. For him, he ain't going to have to pay one dime in state income taxes because every penny of it is exempt. Okay? Well, if all options are on the table, how about we say something like this? Let's say $60,000 can stay exempt. That way, your rank and file state employees who aren't making the exorbitant salaries, they can still maintain their exemption. But how about anything in excess of $60,000 has a special 10% tax levied upon it? All right? You can do the math, Mr. Dardenne. That would be $240,000 for you minus the $60,000 that you would be qualified to be exempt from. That would leave $180,000. A 10% tax on that is $18,000. It still leaves you $220,000, way more than virtually every citizen out there in terms of a pension. So that's not an undue request, is it? And I'll make that challenge to you. Since everything is supposedly on the table, how about we have a representative or a senator sponsor a bill that says only the first $60,000 of a state pension is exempt from income taxes, state income taxes. Thereafter, it's taxed at 10%. That would go back and at least serve as an effective cut to some of the exorbitant practices that Bobby Jindal did. It would rein back in 10% of that. Would also clip Mr. Dardenne's wings a little bit. But I want to see, since you say everything is so dire, it's not pretty, it's not sugar-coated, well, let's see if you're willing to share in the sacrifice. And I issue that. I mean, I don't have a state pension. Every dime I have to report as income. Why should you get $20,000 a month and not have to pay a dime in state income taxes? Explain that to me, Commissioner Dardenne. Explain that. Explain that to all the voters. So I'll make that challenge. And like I said, it will keep the rank and file state employees. They'll still have those that weren't able to get such exorbitant retirement packages. They can still maintain the exemption so that you can say, hey, we didn't cut the little guy, because that's supposed to be who John Bel Edwards is looking out for. And I would submit to you, by appointing someone who has a drain on the state retirement system, $615,000 and increases its accrued liability, that is not looking out for the little guy. So there's your challenge, Mr. Edwards. There's your challenge, Mr. Dardenne. Since everything is on the now, I'm not going to give you a whole lot more of these free ideas, because if you act on it and you're popular from it, I'm going to give you a few, okay? Because you say, well, don't just sit back and criticize, come up with something. I just gave you something, okay? And I challenge you to act on it. But I'm not going to be in the business of making your star shine, okay? All right? You're supposed to be doing this sort of thing on your own. Now, I will wrap this up by saying I'm also going to include a 5 or 6 minute video highlight of Treasurer Kennedy, because I don't like for somebody to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, And I have submitted videos of Treasurer Kennedy before. People said they were too long, so I've took several of his presentations and I cut and pasted them together to give you just a 5 or 6 minute presentation of a video. I hope you'll watch it. I hope you'll take that 5 or 6 minutes to take a look at it, because these type things that he is speaking on is where the focus needs to be, and certainly not on going in and starting to implement tax increases, which is, I know where we're going, and yes, we are going to track any votes on any tax measures. I wish we still had C.B. Ferguson to help us out in that regard, but make no mistake, we're not going to drop the ball. We're going to have the tracking of those votes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, by the way, as I said before, if you have a suggestion for following up on an item, and I want to thank one of our viewers who has already submitted material for me to look into, and if things go right, as I believe they will, you're going to see a 3rd episode, something I wasn't even aware of, entailing John Bel Edwards. So let me just say this: if you have something to suggest, please send it to robert@auctionsellsfast.com. Going to have that flashing on your screen, robert@auctionsellsfast.com. And we will be happy to do the research, and if we can validate it, we will go forward with it. I'll be doing that on the material I was just provided with here not long back, And, you know, that's the way we're going to help hold our officials accountable, and then the voters can deem whether they're worthy of another 4 years in office. Again, take a look at Treasurer Kennedy's material. I believe that's the type thing we need to be focusing on, and not going in here and just raising taxes. And we will see how the Republican delegation within both houses, we will see if they just cave in and go with these tax increases, or whether somebody starts trying to rein in these type of extravagance, such as a $615,000 hit to the unfunded accrued liability that was invoked by the appointment of J. Dardenne. Thank you so much. We look forward to bringing you episode 3 with a little luck. It'll probably be within the next 30 days or so, depending on how long it takes me to fully research the material I was presented. And once again, thank you for the feedback on this website. We look forward to bringing you episode 3. Thank you again so much.